goodness. That was not cool what you did to me.
You're the one taking
Not
my
cool.
water.
Not cool at all. Did you fix all your electronics so that you're not making a big racket?
No, I didn't.
Because everybody's here. Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Hi.
Do you want to know what Joanna just did to me? I was like,
Anything.
hey, you've got a drink here. What's in this? She says water. As I'm taking a sip, it wasn't water. It was water with a bunch of lemons in it.
Yummy.
That's a surprising thing to do to somebody, and I don't think that that's right. So I just wanted to share my hurt feelings before we get started tonight. Thank you so much for being here. I don't know. I'm out of practice, I think.
Right?
It has been
Feels like it's been
a
forever.
couple of weeks.
I
Well,
couldn't
because
wait.
it has been. It's been a couple of weeks. We've been away, but now we're back, and you're back, and we're glad. We're happy for that. Thanks for being here, hanging out with us. We do have a small topic. It's not going to be some long, drawn-out thing, so don't worry about that. So we actually have a few things going on tonight. We've got a small topic to deal with. We have a giveaway, which we're going to be doing, and we have the Q&A. And so we'll be answering your questions a little bit later. And so that's the story of what's going to be happening tonight. Now, as always, things that have happened. So video-wise, I did a video on Sunday, Candy Cane Tetra. If you haven't seen it, check it out because it's cool.
Love 'em.
It's a really awesome Tetra, and they're interesting. Right? So some Tetras have cool colors, some of them like to school tightly, and some of them have interesting behaviors. And I would say the Candy Cane Tetra fits right into that category of very interesting in terms of their personality and the way they behave, especially around one another. You today, what did you do?
I did a video that discusses three suggestions I have if you're looking to set up an aquarium. The fish and the aquascape, the hardscaping supplies that you're using, can make a huge difference in this 3 different ways. I thought it was really fun.
It was a fun video on the small scape this
Right.
morning. Yeah, and so then let's see here. Tomorrow we'll have members video coming out, and then Sunday, I'll have a video out on Primetime Aquatics as well, because that's how we roll. Places we're going to be, we're kind of excited because Saturday is a swap, and swaps are always fun. So if you are in the area, the Midwest area, the wow. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. The Green Water Aquarius Society is having their swap on Saturday, the 29th. Starts at 10 a.m. Goes till, I believe, 1? 10 to 1. And it's in Tinley Park, Illinois. So if you're around, check it out. Our website, for those of you who are curious, has already been updated. We've updated the fish. And by the way, we've updated it with some of the tanks that we've taken down. So some of you had asked about the 33 longs and some of the other ones. The bookshelf tank. Well, the bookshelf tank sold last time at the GCCA meeting, but we've got some aquariums up there. They're used, of course, but if you're going to be in the area, it'll save you a little bit of money, even over the $1 per gallon sale in some cases. The 33 longs they don't make anymore, so that is not a thing Aquarium does. So if you want a tank that dimension, which is 4 feet long, it's a 55 in terms of length and width, but only a foot tall. Well, good luck. You're going to have to get those custom made because they don't make those anymore.
Yeah, it's really tempting. As
So,
I see him standing in the living room, I keep on thinking,
you could throw one up there. I could pull one off the website
No.
right now.
I know, but I'm really thinking the 22 long that I
22
have
bookshelf long,
is
Well,
secret.
it's
It's
not a
gonna be going in
secret
here.
anymore.
Well, it's a secret between us and you now.
Okay, that's a good secret. A way to keep a secret. Maybe I shouldn't tell you
you.
anything. I see how that works now. It's like, I got to tell you something, but it was supposed to be a secret. I'm just going to tell a bunch of people, but, as long as it's between a very defined bunch of people, it's okay. That's how that works.
So the 33 is a 4-footer, and then
Yeah.
mine is like, what,
The
36?
22 long is, I believe,
It's like
3 feet. Yeah,
Okay.
so 3 foot, 22 long. So, yeah, Green Water Aquarius Society is going to be awesome. And what's interesting about that is there are no swaps, no meetings, at least none that we would be at. Well, there's no swaps around us in August, and the only meeting that there is
This is
the summer parties, which is not about fish sales. It's just about summer parties for both GCC and Greenwater, and we're going to miss both of those anyway.
Are we?
So, yeah. So what that means is we will not have another swap until September. And that's, for those of you, even if you're not
fall.
in the area, That's when fish swap season happens. And so you should be looking and researching in your area, where's the closest fish club, and do they host swaps and auctions, because they usually start in September. And that's when we're going to get really, really busy. So it's going to be fun. Looking forward to doing that. So that's where we're going to be. And then, like I said, we've got basically the month of August in terms of being places off. Now, the one thing I will say is September, like I said, that picks up. We've got a Greenwater, we've got a GCCA swap, and I will be at the Keystone Clash. So I don't know. I think it's been a while since I've mentioned that, but probably like
fun.
This early, late winter or early spring is probably the last time I mentioned that. But just a reminder, I will be there. And my gosh, am I going to be very busy? I just realized I got an email the other day, and we were talking about, okay, well, what do you want to do? So I'm going to do 2 presentations over that weekend. I am going to be judging, I think, maybe the cichlid competition. I don't know. Like, we're still settling on, okay, what do I want to judge? So I'm going to be doing that. And I'm going to, of course, be hanging out with anybody who's going there. So I've never been to the Keystone Clash. I hear it's awesome. It's in Pennsylvania, I believe. I mean, I really should have my act together at this point. But
you should.
We've got other things going on before I have to worry about stuff in September. But I'm looking forward to it, because from everything I've seen, it's supposed to be pretty fun. So that is what I'm looking forward to in September. So yeah, that's the story. Now, the title of tonight's live stream. Only 9% of people are doing something.
It was surprising.
I was very surprised. And so I want to talk about that a little bit tonight, because it's not good. And I kind of feel like a failure. I feel like I haven't done a good job explaining why that 9% should be 100%, or darn near close to 100%. So for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, which I'm assuming is 94% of you, well, we're throwing out percentages. 2 weeks ago, not yesterday, or actually, no, it wasn't yesterday, it was a week ago, last week, I set out a poll. And the poll on YouTube was, how often do you quarantine your fish? And basically, if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was, I just throw them right in. I quarantine them for a couple days. I do a couple weeks. I do a month. I think those were the 4 options. I was expecting a different outcome. I didn't expect everybody to be like, yeah, I'm going all out. I'm doing 4 weeks. But I expected a higher percentage than 9%. Moreover, I didn't expect 3/4 quarantine their fish a couple days or less.
Wow.
So I was pretty surprised by that, considering how often we talk about it on live streams. I've done a couple videos on it, how to quarantine fish, and then, what to do with quarantine filters. And and maybe just when I'm talking about those things, the people who are interested in that are watching them. So I'm thinking that there's a greater percentage of people who are doing this. And then you throw out a poll. And by the way, I think up to this point, there were like 4,000 people who answered that poll. So it's not a small sample size, right? I would say it's fairly large. And to only have 9% quarantining for 4 weeks, but then more surprisingly, 3/4, 75%. You like how I did that math in my brain? 3/4 of people said, a couple days or maybe not at all. So that was a shocking poll result. You see those thumbnails, shocking. I should have had electricity. Boom. But that's not good, right? And that's not good for a lot of reasons. And a lot of the comments that were in that, that were associated with that poll were, well, it depends where I get them from. My retort, if you will, is it almost doesn't matter where you get them from. Yes, to a certain extent, it can play a minor role. However, the benefit that you think you're getting from a source where they do some type of quarantine and then letting them take responsibility for the quarantine and then the person takes no responsibility is eventually going to lead to a problem, even if it doesn't lead to a problem in months or maybe a couple of years. Like, well, it's just worked out. Well, that's good, and I'm happy for you. I'm glad that's worked out. But at some point, it's not going to. And often when it doesn't work out, you usually notice the problem. And for those of you who've had problems with aquariums, you know what I'm talking about. You're going to hear me now. This is happening late on a Sunday afternoon. You realize there's a problem. the PetSmarts, the Petcos are closed, and you're not going to, then you got to go to work in the morning. By the time you get back, it's going to be Monday afternoon, late evening or something like that. And by the time you're able to deal with the issue, it's going to be 24 hours past the time you notice the issue, which may have been around for days before that. You don't want to be in that situation. And one of the ways that we prevent issues, catastrophic issues from happening, is by making sure that the fish that we bring in are separated for a period of time from those fish they're going to spend the rest of their lives with. And I think that's one of the most important things that can be done in fish keeping that prevents the vast majority of problems. So, for those people who answered never or a couple days, it's all the same to me. All right, if you're only quarantining for a few days, you might as well not do it. Right? For the most part, it is not helpful. And I've said this before when it comes to pet stores. If the pet stores are telling you, oh yeah, they've been here for a couple days, they're fine, they haven't done anything. Understand, you should take absolutely, positively no comfort in that whatsoever. Because trust me, we've brought in tens of thousands of fish at this point. A couple of days means nothing. The only thing that you're losing in a couple of days are the absolute weakest fish that couldn't handle the transportation. They were a little skinny. They were already messed up, and the slightest shock to their environment was going to cause them to die. I mean, they were the weakest of the weak of the weak. That was fully expected. That's what you're losing in the first couple of days. After that, over the next couple weeks, yes, often things like ick will show up and some of the more noticeable, more common parasites. And so for those who answered, I quarantined for a couple weeks, that's not bad. And I think that's all we can realistically expect from wherever we're buying our fish. All right, that is doing really well. And so when you find a pet store that is quarantining fish on the order of a couple of weeks, that's really good. And so, we did that video with Flip Aquatics at one time, and he said, hey, we bring them in and we quarantine them, and they've got a very specific thing that they do to maximize their healthy fish. That's an unusual thing. However, even if I were bringing in fish from Flip Aquatics, who does one of the better jobs in the industry of quarantining, I'm still taking responsibility for the fish when I bring them into my fish room, and they're still getting the 4 weeks, because I'm not in any hurry to introduce fish into an established aquarium only to watch something bad happen later on. Now, so the few days or less, you might as well just throw them in, because like I said, you're just screening out the weak fish. The further you go to the quarantine process, the more confidence you're going to have in that process. And what you're going to start to notice when you start bringing in more and more and more fish is there are things that pop up, and it's more common than you might think. After a week, even after 2 weeks, I've had fish that were fine, and all of a sudden after 3 weeks, they've got ick, or they've got some type of bacterial infection, or the things that take a little bit longer that you may not notice right away are a lot of the internal parasites, where they're actually eating, right? Especially if they haven't eaten in a while because they were shipped. And I've talked about this numerous times. So if you're buying your fish from a pet store and they go from the vast majority of fish that the common fish that we buy in pet stores are coming from overseas. They make a stop at a wholesaler, they make a stop at your pet store, and then they are in your home. That whole process might take place over the course of a week, right? From overseas to wholesaler to pet store to your house. It can happen where those fish really haven't eaten much in that entire time, and so you start throwing food in there and they're eating, but they might have an internal parasite, and that doesn't show for a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks. I've had cases where ick doesn't show for like 3 weeks, and you're like, what is going on? These fish were fine. I didn't expose them to anything. Nothing went in the tank, and here we are, and now I'm dealing with an ick issue, and I'm like, this is not cool. So you run the risk. I'm not saying that all the places you purchase fish from are going to have equal amount of risk, right? You want to try to reduce that. We've talked about that numerous times too, right? Where some of your big box stores, you're probably going to have some issues, right? I just assume back in the day when we would buy fish from the big box pet stores, I'm going to have an issue. And that was one of the few times where I'm like, ick meds are going in, because 9 times out of 10, I knew if I didn't do that, I'd be putting them in anyway, right? Some of the better pet stores around, fish stores around our home are better, but certainly not fail safe. And yeah, they would, we've had the fish in for a few weeks, or I'm sorry, a few days. And yeah, that's nothing to me. So those all get quarantined. I made a big mistake, and I'll give you an example. I made a big mistake a few years ago. I did start to get a little bit lazy with fish I was getting from our clubs. You would think of all the fish that you could acquire, the fish that you get from club members are probably going to be the safest. These are fish that are often bred in their tanks. They're not moving around. There's not a lot of fish being, moving around. What I mean from, tank to tank, house to house, that kind of thing. So they're bred in those tanks. There's not a ton of opportunity to introduce disease. They're not being mixed with fish from the outside. Usually they're being cared for on a daily basis by someone who's in their tanks every day, possibly multiple times per day. So anything that would pop up would be caught early. And so I started to realize, okay, well, these fish, I am almost never having an issue. And the word almost is important here because I wasn't having an issue, and I wasn't having an issue for like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, until I did have an issue. And it was big because I threw some fish in a 125. They looked fine. I had really good luck doing that, and then the luck ran out. And so what happened was I lost not only most of the fish that I got from the club meeting, I lost a number of fish that were established in that aquarium, and treating 125 gallons of water is not like treating what should have been a 10-gallon quarantine tank. I could have easily put the fish that I had purchased in a 10-gallon, even a 20-gallon, and watch them. And if they started to have problems, I could have treated that volume of water. It would have been very simple. It would have been a lot cheaper to control the temperature of that water. If I've got to up the heat a little bit, up the temperature, that's a lot easier. There was no live plants in that. There would be no live plants in your quarantine tank, no inverts, no, oh my gosh, okay, so this fish can take salt, this one can't, so now I can't use salt in the entire tank. None of that exists in a quarantine tank. Usually you've got one type of fish. If you can use salt, knock yourself out. If you can't, well, whatever. But that problem happened because I just got a little bit lazy. And so the point of all of this is quarantine your fish and quarantine them properly. I mean, the 4 weeks is not some made up number. That came from the work and the studies that I did in my aquaculture and fish health master cert. And those numbers were coming from people who deal with very large public aquariums where if something goes wrong, they're probably losing their jobs, and they're losing fish that are possibly irreplaceable, that are 10 years old, 15 years old, and they're very, very large, and they're a major attraction. If they throw something in that tank and something bad happens, you're not treating, how are you going to treat 50,000 gallons of water? Like, let me go ahead and get my ICX and dump in the little bottle. Well, I'm going to need you got a dump truck over there or a milk truck you can just fill with ICX. I got to, do this thing. And oh, by the way, people are going to see it all. Why is that tank all green? Well, we made a mistake. So, yeah, the 9% was disappointing. I wish that would have been a little bit higher. Just trust me, it costs almost nothing to get a 10. You don't even have to leave it up and running all the time. A 10-gallon tank. You can use a hang-on back filter. Just take media from your existing tank, throw it in there before you buy the fish. A little heater, a light, so that you can see the fish in case something goes wrong. If you got to put it on the floor, right? You don't need a stand. It's a 10-gallon tank. It's going to weigh 100 pounds. A sturdy dresser, just put it somewhere. And if you want to break it down, when you're done with it, break it down. Drain the water out, set it aside, put it in a closet, and then you could take your filter out, drain it, and then you'll have filter media from the next time.
I have a question.
Yes.
And if you said it already, I missed it, but if people get fish from you, should they quarantine? That's
a great question. So,
or you're reliable, don't even bother.
Everything I said is a lie if you're getting fish from me. I mean, that's a really good question, because people who buy fish from me, one of the reasons why I think is because, we've got most of our customers that wind up being repeat customers, and it's awesome that happens. And hopefully they're having a great experience because I am taking the hit over those 4 weeks. All those weak fish I talked about that might go, in a couple of days, that's on me. The fish that might start to look a little gnarly because, wow, these couple aren't eating, or I have to, treat something, that's all happening here. But even with that, you don't know what the fish have been exposed to that they're dealing with relatively successful, but they could potentially bring that into your tank anyway. Even though the fish that you're buying are healthy, they could be harboring something that might hurt the other fish. The likelihood that they're harboring a parasite for the 4 weeks that I have them, and then the 4 weeks that you have them, and that parasite is remaining viable in their system without showing any symptoms is very, very minimal. And so, yes, if you're buying fish from me, I would still quarantine. Now, are you going to do 4 weeks? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe you're like, okay, he's done the 4 weeks. They were fine. It's the same water parameters. It's the same stuff. And you're doing 2 weeks. 2 weeks is a lot better than a couple of days. Like I said, 2 weeks is usually, it's a good start. I don't care. I mean, if I'm buying fish from the people that we get fish from at the swaps, I know their tanks. I've been to many of their homes. I know how they treat their fish. I know that their fish are healthy. I'm still putting them in a quarantine tank. I never throw those fish in a tank with everything else. So, and it's not anything bad about them. I know they're awesome, but I don't take the chance. It's my responsibility.
I have another really important question.
Okay.
Kevin would like to know how many taffy apple donuts to bring on Saturday.
Were those the ones where I polished off too?
So good. Wherever you get your donuts from.
Yeah, that was good.
Just back up the truck.
Back up the truck.
We were pretty popular after that.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yep.
You had a couple to share.
Those were remarkable, man.
Kevin's
so
nice.
anyway, yeah, and if you've got questions, now's a great time. You can put them in the chat. Just put at Primetime Aquatics in the question somewhere so it highlights it for us, and we know there is a question somewhere in the words.
Bob did have a question, where to find out where your local fish swaps are, and Aquarium Co-op has a list, right?
I believe they do.
If you go on their website?
I think the last time I was on their website, it was still active. And it was a fairly good one. So I think you could just click on a state, and it would show you if there were fish clubs. Like I said, I don't know how complete it is, but it looked like, at least for Illinois, they had covered most of the, like Greenwater was there, GCCA was there. I think the Chicago Library Society might have been there. I don't know if the Plant Club, Botanical Club was there or not, but yeah, I think that's one place you could do it. And you could also just search tropical fish clubs near me or in whatever state you're in. So I think that's kind of how I found ours, is I just started Googling things, and I was like, oh, wow, what's this Greater Chicago Cichlid Association? I have to check that out. And then once you find one, if there's others in your area, I mean, that really is, you have to find one. And once you find one, trust me, people are usually members of not one club in their area, but all of them. It happens that way.
Brian wants to know, what if the fish just wear masks and stay 6 inches away from each other?
You know, that could be a thing. I think that's the latest. I think some of the big aquarium chemical manufacturers are coming out with little fish masks.
And out their little
and
masks
little
as they happen.
Little fins that are placed exactly as far apart as you need to swim. Yeah, little swimming bubbles. That could happen. Let's see here. Leora says, I had a pH crash and ammonia spike and 3 established tanks on same week. Did just add phosphate remover pads in all 3 tanks. 2 questions. One, can phospho remover cause a pH crash? I don't know. That's a good question. I've never used them. Should I raise KH for buffering? Yes, I would definitely do that, because if your KH is low, that's one of the reasons why, or the reason why your pH crashed most likely. And for that, aragonite, or if you want to just do the Carib Sea African cichlid mix, that has buffering capacity in it as well. And so those are 2 really good options for raising KH to stabilize your pH. Chris says, how about shrimp? I've wondered it before. If I were putting shrimp in with other shrimp, I would quarantine them. If I am putting shrimp in with fish, I don't worry about it as much, because like they're not carrying ick, they're not carrying a lot of the parasites that would impact fish. Somebody asked about plants. You could certainly do that. It's not a horrible idea. It's not a bad idea if the plants that you're purchasing were in a fish tank with a lot of other fish. Then I probably would, because we've been to some, and it's a little bit, there's a risk there. And with some of the fish stores that we've been to lately, the trend seems to be, hey, we want to make our fish display tanks look nice, and therefore what we're going to do is we're going to put some plants in the tanks with the fish. That's fine, right? It does make it look nicer. It's a nice way to display the product. But understand there could be a risk there. So some of the fish have ick, and the ick parasites, typically what they do is they fall off the fish. They usually go to the substrate, but if the plant is rooted in the substrate, or often they come like with that wool, the little the cup. What is that cup called?
Nut pot.
Yeah. If that happens and the ick parasite falls in there, and then you chuck that plant in your tank, you're introducing ick into your tank. The way to get around that, of course, is if you do quarantine plants again, for usually if you're at tropical fish temperatures, so your standards, let's say 78 degrees, if you left them in a quarantine tank for a couple of weeks, when the ick hatches and it's looking for a host and there's no fish in that tank, well, it's not going to find a host, so it's just going to die. They die very quickly. As they're searching for a host, they don't have a lot of nutrients to sustain themselves. That's why they need the host, the fish. So if they can't find it, they're going to die very, very quickly. So usually a couple weeks with the plants. The other reason why people like to quarantine plants is, what if there are snails, right? So often within a couple weeks, you'll start to see the snails after they hatch, because sometimes the eggs can be a little bit difficult to see. So that would be another reason.
Here's a couple good questions from Tim's Auto Solutions. Blew a car with Betta?
Depends on the size of the tank, but it could work. It could. I'd probably want at least a 40 breeder, maybe a 55, like a 4-foot tank, like a 55. Not because of their size, just to give them some space. Electric blue car really don't chase other fish around all that much. The Betta's not going to chase an electric blue car. They're too active. They're too big. So from a personality, like a perspective, I think they would probably be okay. But you never know. Bettas, sometimes they got little tiny heads, and they're like, "Hey man, I got some few screws loose. I'm going to attack everything."
Could get you.
So, or the electric blue car could be a little bit too active and make the Betta timid. So you never know for sure. But I wouldn't even try it in anything less than like a 40 breeder.
MNC wants to know how the studio remodel's going.
You know what? That's a great question. So
if you're referring to this, what do you call that when you're in the
you're in limbo.
In the airplane? No, when you're in the lineup.
You're in the tarmac.
Getting ready to
waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is not going anywhere yet because we have to get the gallery set first, and so that was what I was assuming that we were talking about. It's going. So right now, I've cleared out one wall completely, and I think I shared this in whatever the last video was. But since then, in this hurt, I think I shared this with the members last week. I took a jigsaw to my double 40-gallon breeder stand and my triple 33 long stand. The only way I was getting these things out of the house. And she's like, she's working because she works from home. And all of a sudden, I hear the door open, and there's me just covered in sawdust, right in half, right? So that was a little tough, right? One of the things I was saying last week is it got real at that point because everything I had done up to that point was reversible. It's like if I want to just go back to the way it was, but I'm going to put the tanks back. I made a mistake. I could do that. Now I can't. Well, I could, but now I've got a significantly greater labor-intensive situation because I'd have to rebuild those stands, and I'm not doing that. I'm not saying I would go back. I don't want to. I think the plan that we've got is going to be awesome. So those went out in the garbage, and then this one is really going to hurt. This one's going to suck, and I actually put it off. I was supposed to do it because garbage day was today. I was going to do it yesterday, and I didn't. I have to get this done between now and next Wednesday. The triple, the 10-gallon where I had the 9 10-gallons. That was one of my favorite stands that I built. I don't know why. I just really liked it. It just worked out so perfectly. Everything was so awesome.
Yeah.
It's just one of those days when you're in your carpentry groove. You guys ever felt that way? Where you're carpentering and you're like, wow, man, I am doing such a good job with my carpentry skills. I felt that way that day, and I was on point. All the wood was perfect, and everything worked out great. And now, in just a few short days, I'm going to be taking a jigsaw, and that's going to go right in half because that's not coming up the stairs. And once I do that, that was important because then I have full access to the one wall. And there's actually, there's still a lot to do, but we'll be at least halfway done with the breakdown. We've got your rack of 6 tanks that's going to be next. My problem right now is we have to really think about where your fish are going because almost all the fish in the 420s and the 29s, like the fish tanks that are usually behind us in a lot of our videos, we're keeping almost all of those fish. Like one of the tanks, you're just going to move over, the one with the rummy nose rasboras. Mm-hmm. That means I've got 5 other tanks where there's fish in there that we're planning to use in other setups. And at the same time, I've got to start bringing the fish in for September. And all the while, I've cut my number of quarantine tanks in half. So what that means is I've got to start really figuring out where the fish are going to go. That's kind of my holdup right now. Once I figure that out, the breakdown of the tanks is actually not that hard. It's figuring out where the fish are going to go right now that's causing issues.
Yeah. Melanie's here.
What's
Hi,
up?
Melanie.
So,
All right, she's got a question, looking to get a little help with algae control in the Congo tank. So her Congo Tetra tank. She's thinking maybe Florida flagfish. I would say so.
yeah,
right?
oh, for sure. If you've got, if we're dealing with green hair algae, that would certainly work. Yeah, Congos will probably mess with the mono shrimp, I would think. But the Florida flagfish, that would be kind of a cool look too, because they're really pretty. And if it's green hair algae, that would certainly work. If you're dealing with kind of like the diatom algae or like the softer green algae, you could get some really cool bristlenose plecos. They don't have to be the standards. I mean, you could do like the long fin varieties. You've got the lemon drop blue eye long fin plecos. The super red long fin plecos are really pretty. So there's some options there that are not just like, oh, here's my brown bristlenose pleco. I actually think they look cool anyway, especially the males when they get the big bristles. You don't have any plants in there, so it's not like you got to worry about them eating soft leaf like sword plants or anything like that from what I can remember. So bristlenose plecos, Florida flagfish. If you were dealing with like, oh my gosh, I might be seeing some black-beard algae, then you could go with the Siamese algae eater and do a couple, 2-3 of those in that size tank. They'd be totally fine. There's plenty of area there for those two to kind of go about their business and not really run into each other. So all of those are pretty solid choices. Fish fan 20 gallon long, what's up? What movie is this? We all got problems, honey, but we don't solve them with guns. You know what? Maybe it's because the way I said it, but it had a Raising Arizona feel to it.
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
You know, it's just, but maybe it's just because I was saying it like a moron, but it felt like that's the way it needed to be said. Yeah.
That would be my guess too.
James says, my albino bristlenose made babies in the same cave my Brichardi made babies. That is what we call your lucky cave. And so you're always going to want to hang on to that lucky cave because clearly there's something amazing going on there where everybody likes to stop by, have some babies, and then go about their business. Let's see here. Aptex says, at what point do you have to check if your floor can support your aquarium? My biggest are 255 gallon. That's a good question. It's not something I worry about here because our fish room is in the basement. So it's cement, solid cement, and I could put whatever I want down there if I can, I wouldn't hesitate on that particular floor. If I had a 5,000 gallon tank, I wouldn't worry about it. But if we're talking about a floor that's just supported by, a second, it's maybe a second floor, or you don't have a basement, so it's not a solid slab. I don't know. I'm not an engineer or anything like that. I know part of it depends upon which direction your floor joists are running relative to your tanks. It's always better to put your tanks perpendicular to your floor joist so that the weight of the tanks is resting on more than one floor joist as opposed to parallel. Well, it's like, oh, it's all on one. I've seen some people do some crazy things that I would not recommend, but I don't know. I don't have a good answer to that question. We were talking about that behind us where we've got these tanks here. And in some ways, we do use a bit of common sense, and we lose it sometimes when we're talking about fish tanks. And we were talking about, I think, a 55 gallon here. I was like, that's a little bit. To me, I'm just not comfortable with that. And I think it was Whip one time. Whip being Whip brings up good points. He's like, well, if I was sitting up there with 4 big guys on a couch, would you worry about it? No. Okay, well, that would be more than a 55 gallon aquarium. I'm like, well, that's a good point, right? But again, I'm not an engineer dude, so I don't have an answer like, okay, here's the calculation you do depending on the thickness of the floor joist, and I don't know.
Yeah, that makes 2 of us.
Yeah, I just try to keep them in the basement.
All right, second floor is helping us out. Hey, Shannon and Ryan.
What's up?
All right, we missed Chris Smith, a new prime timer.
What?
And
oh yeah, we gotta hook
there's
that
a
up.
few
Yeah,
things.
There we go. Yeah, I know.
Oh.
Chris, by the way, thank you for becoming a prime time partner. Appreciate it.
Welcome
Hope you
to
enjoy
the
it.
weird group.
And I was gonna do these things, and I got off track a little bit. Matthew, thank you so much for the super chat. Just want to say thank you so much for your channel. My tank sprung a leak yesterday, and
Oh,
I had
no.
your videos up while I was setting up my new tank. All right, so it started out not good, right? I mean, it was a bad thing. Tank is leaking. That can be stressful. But then I like the way you dealt with it.
Yeah.
I think next time you could improve on it just a little bit. I'm gonna offer a little constructive criticism. You said you were watching our videos while you were setting up your new tank, which I like that. That was awesome. I think I would have liked to have seen, I was watching your videos while I was setting up 2 new tanks to replace the one tank that sprung a leak.
Wow.
It's kind of like a whole cut off one head and 2 will follow.
Oh, really?
Right? So what was that? The dude from the bad guys from Marvel.
Yeah. The
Oh my gosh.
Hydra.
Hydra. Yeah, you Hydra those bad boys, man. You spring a leak and you're like, huh, I got to double it. That's just what happens. Those 2 spring a leak, now you get 4 more. Of course, maybe if you're constantly springing leaks in tanks, that's not the best idea, but it's okay. We'll do it anyway.
There's
But
also
thank you so much.
There's also yes, thank you. There's also another message
Whip.
you missed. 10-month milestone message
Whips,
from somebody
10
named Whip.
months. 10 months. Thank you.
Yay for
Where was your
Whip.
where was you
Where was you?
last weekend? I know you where you wasn't. Madison. Oh man, dude, don't do that to me. Madison had a big to do with the ACA. Yeah, I would have liked to have gone to that, but it fell. So the reason why we missed the stream 2 weeks ago is we were scheduled to do an advanced motorcycle training course, and that ran from Wednesday evening all the way through Sunday, and it was insane. I mean, you know how you see those police guys doing the motorcycle stuff? Well, we didn't have to use our own bikes, so we got to use some old 1990s training Road
Sweet.
Kings.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Old police
And
bikes.
Basically, what we did is from Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, all day Saturday, and most of the day Sundays, we were on these bikes doing cones and figure eights and all kinds of stuff. And
Wheelies,
it was-
stappies.
it was
I'm just kidding.
really, it was pretty challenging. And the course was set up in a way where it didn't matter what skill set you had walking in, the instructors would be able to challenge, each person based on their individual skill set. And oh my gosh, I mean, those bikes must have been dropped.
A million times.
I don't know how many times. I'm lucky, and it's not because I'm the best rider. I didn't drop the bike, but there were people there that were better than me that dropped their bikes a lot, only because they were pushing themselves so much harder than I was pushing myself. I was one of those people where it's like, if I'm going through a thing and I'm not going to make it, I'm just going to run over the cone, or I'm going to go straight and it's going to be fine. Where there were people that are like, no, man, I'm going to make this, basically lock the wheel and do as small a turn as I can. And I'm like, well, I'll just not do that if I'm not getting the balance right. So anyway, that's where we were. And it was awesome, but I would have liked to have gone to the ACA, because not only that, but there was a ton of people up there from our clubs that I would like to have spent time with. But maybe next time. We'll see. Kevin, thank you so much for being a member the last 5 months. Sorry I'm late. Local ice cream shop called my name. Dude.
Yeah.
How are you going to argue
understand.
that? How,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have
It's humid. It's summer.
I don't have a
Gotta go.
retort. Will allow me to retort. Anybody know that movie? Don't say it.
No, but we did get a. Wait, I saw that
Check
somewhere.
out the big brains
The,
on Brad.
I don't remember that either.
Yes, you do.
For the quote, we all got problems, honey, but we don't solve them with guns. The answer is the Philadelphia experiment.
Oh, I've never seen
I've
that.
never seen it, but it sounds like one.
Yeah, I still think that
That's-
should have come out of
Yeah.
Well, honey.
Totally Nicolas
Cage's wife.
Cage-ish.
M&C Aquatics, thank you so much for becoming a prime timer, prime time partner. Appreciate it. Oh, there we go. Pulp Fiction. It's all over the place. People are like, come on, man. You got to do better than that. I'll try to make the quotes less easy for all you crazy people out there who are just on your game. M&C, I'm hoping that I can have a new fish room 3.0 build next year. Hopefully it will hold all of my tanks. That's usually a nice goal, right? To build a fish room, be like, hey, I'm not going to outgrow this thing for a very long time. And if I start to outgrow it, I got a lot of work, right? That's kind of the idea. That's cool.
Andrew wants to know, what are you doing with your leftover tanks? Any chance of selling them at the GCCA swap?
I'm selling them right now. So the tanks that have been broken down are literally sitting downstairs, upright, cleaned as best that we can clean them. I mean, you might have to clean them a little bit. Actually, I didn't do any of it. Her sister cleaned
did.
these tanks, and she was
She's
out in the
amazing.
backyard with a bottle of vinegar, some razor blades,
Yep.
and some
Just-
elbow grease. And she
Yeah.
just took her time, and she was really pretty meticulous about it. And I was trying to tell him, like, you don't have to do that good of
bottom.
a job. Yeah, she was doing the bottom. Like, you don't have to do the bottom. And she was like, I just want you to know that these bottoms, some of them were scraped, and I didn't scratch them. Like, the bottoms are going to get scratched. First of all, nobody cares because there's going to be gravel on
Sand.
them. And
Yeah.
second of all, that's how they wind up getting scratched on the bottom pane, the part that you can't see.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they are on the website. And right now, I sold a fair number of them at the last GCCA meeting, and then the rest of them that we have available right now are on the website for the swap on Saturday. I don't know what we're going to have left on in September, so we'll probably have more tanks though, because we'll have some 20 longs, we'll have the 29s that are coming down, a couple of 55s are coming down, possibly 175, and then if we break down the 150, we already have someone we've got two people technically who are in line for that one, Kevin, and Whip is my backup right now for that bad boy. Wink has been a member for 22 months. That's a fun number, I think. 22 is just a fun number.
Sure it is.
With 12 each juvenile fairy, which is the Brichardi and Caudopunks, I'm going to start a biotope. In your experience, what age do they begin breeding? Should I be concerned with World War III? The Brichardi breed a lot smaller and a lot more prolifically than the Caudopunks do.
Yeah.
They will probably want to figure out the space, because they're both going to be breeding in rocks. So yeah, there's going to be some stuff going on there. My philosophy is if I'm specifically trying to breed fish, I try to separate them in species only tanks. If you just want the biotope, which is maybe is what you're after, and you're not as concerned about breeding, you're more concerned about the aggression, you probably won't get a ton of fry survival. And if I had to put my money on anybody, the Brichardi are going to outbreed the Caudopunks by a large margin. And then you're just going to have to see, okay, how are these guys getting along? And worst case is you do the biotope, and maybe you've got a 4-foot tank. You're like, okay, let's see. The Caudopunks are going to hang out down at the bottom third, and the Brichardi will be a little bit more open water swimming unless they're protecting fry. Worst case is maybe the Brichardi are just becoming too numerous. They are starting to bully the Caudopunks too much, and you start netting them out and catching them, and you're like, okay, I'm bringing them to the pet store. We got to keep these numbers down, sort of thing. But so, yeah, that's how I would handle that. But I wouldn't stress about it. It'll be a cool biotope. And then if you wanted to, you could probably add some other rock dwellers like the Julidachromis ornatus, or the Lelupi, or the Dickfeldi, or the Transcriptus. You could do more open water, higher swimmers like the Cyprichromis leptosoma. Although, again, the nice thing about them is their fry are large enough where I don't think the Brichardi would eat them, because they spit out some pretty large fry, the Cyprichromis do.
Andrea says, hooray for multi-tank syndrome. My 8-year-old asked for another tank in her room, and I said, race you to the car. She said she was kidding, but I wasn't. I mean, rock on.
Yeah, that's kind of like when our kids were small. We started doing the fish tanks, and they were excited for it, like any child is. They're excited for it for a while, and then their excitement starts to wane, and maybe gets replaced by other things. We're like, let's go to the fish store, and they'd be like, oh, why again? We're like, yeah, it'll be great. They're like, all right, well, how long are we going to be there? Right? And now, the joke's on them because they both work in the fish room. So, and they've been doing it since they were little wee ones.
You never know. They may.
But here's the funny thing. But here's the funny thing. I asked them both if they're ever going to have fish in their homes when they grow up, and they both say yes, but it won't be so many tanks. I'm like, well, what kind of fish will you keep? And they both have answers. So it's kind of interesting that they like fish. And Luke works for a wholesaler, so I mean, he's in it every day.
Yeah.
Like he used to come home and be like, oh man, I saw these cool fish. I don't get to see him quite as much because he's always so busy, but he's still in it. Whip, thank you so much for the super chat. Don't know if you saw, but I did a thing this week. After 7 months, I put my toe in the water again and brought home a black arowana.
No way,
dude!
Whoa,
that's
what size
cool.
tank? What do you got him in, and who else is with him? Yeah, they're fine.
He's got a 15-gallon long. It's only 4 feet long. It's fine.
Max out like what, about that big?
Yeah. I got a mini arowana. That's going to be cool,
That
though,
would
man.
be
That's
so
cool.
cute.
Congratulations.
Can you imagine if they had micro arowana?
They all start out that way until, a few months later, you're like, oh, I think this thing's getting a little big.
Yeah, that's how Lisa got her first one. She's like, so cute. Remember?
Lynn said the Tigerlimia have fry already. That's cool. That's very cool. Yeah, once they start breeding the Tigerlimia, man, they really, they'll keep your tank full of babies, kind of like the
Lots of
Bouchardy
babies.
do. Yeah, lots of babies. Billy says, can shrimp go with any fish? They can go with a fair number of fish, but they've got to be really small fish, like a lot of your small rasboras, some of your smaller tetras. Most fish, except for the smallest of your rasboras, are going to eat shrimp babies, the shrimplets. And most fish that are like, let's say, almost the size of your thumb to larger are going to eat just all your shrimp, just because they're going to eat things that fit inside their mouth. So, yeah, it depends. Now, we've done species profiles on shrimp, the red cherries, and the blue dreams, and we've offered some suggestions for shrimp tank mates. Did we do a shrimp buddies video? I think we did as well, like a tank mates for shrimp.
Did we?
I don't know if we did, and that video's got to come out soon because we should have. I think we did. Are you going to look it up? Oh, I thought you were going to look it up.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, we've done videos out there that'll kind of help you along that process. I think it's time to do a giveaway. What say you?
Yippee! I say yes.
It's right about that time. I mean, I didn't really realize it until I looked up. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's usually the time we do this. So
yes.
let's do this. And I've got some good news for everybody. So it's going to be cool stuff happening here. All right. So one winner is going to win all this stuff. You could, it's dangerous for you to be in the frozen food section. Why is that? Because you could melt all this stuff. Who's got that? What's your name? Sheldon. What's your name? Todd Wilkinson. It's Italian for extra special. Oh, there we go. Steelways, My Blue Heaven. Yeah, I love that movie.
Bravo.
Okay, are you ready? Here we go. Giveaway stuff. Things that we're giving away today.
Giveaway.
One winner's getting all of this. So first thing is we've got some small little packets. Northfin food. So as most of you know, we feed exclusively Northfin foods. We've been doing it for a while. We're excited because now at the swaps, we're carrying the very thing that we've been feeding our fish for the last few years at least. And it's nice because people are coming back now at the swaps like, I need more of that. My fish love it. So Northfin foods, if you've never tried it, this is going to be your opportunity to give this a try. And so first thing is we've got these are all going to be pellets. So that's the theme for today. So this is the Krill Pro. So this is really good for a lot of your bottom feeders. I feed this stuff to Cory cats, to all my loaches, pretty much all my cichlids. I actually feed this to my shrimp because they go crazy for it. Bristlenose plecos, all of your bottom feeders are going to love this. And again, it's small, so these are small pellets, so even like your midwater swimmers are going to eat this too. So little guy of krill. Then we've got the Betta bits. Now I will feed the Betta bits to all my fish as well, but you like to feed this to your bettas.
Right? I do.
So you feed them a few kernels a couple times a day. Mm-hmm. And this stuff is nice because it stays on the top of the water long enough so that the bettas can eat it. And it doesn't just sink immediately. So this is the Betta bits. And then we've got a couple of community pellets. And again, everybody eats this stuff, right? So it doesn't really matter what type of fish. I've never seen a fish be like, what's that? I'm not eating it. So a couple of these guys, that's the community stuff. And then I got some bigger packages, not all just the tiny stuff. There's another bigger package of the community. It's kind of getting a reflection, but these are the community pellets. Once again, they're the 1/2 mil, so they're on the smaller side, but I like them because I can feed them to a lot of our smaller fish. And then when they start to sink, all the bottom guys are going crazy for that. Now, this is one I really like because I've been starting to use this a little bit more, and that's the fry starter. So if you've got really tiny fish, so for those of you who are like, oh, I just started breeding, I got the Tigerlimia, I got them. I saw someone was, their multis were going crazy, or the Bouchardy or whatever. This is good stuff because this is like a powder, and you can feed this to very, very tiny fish. So one winner is going to get all of this. Now, here's the deal. Here's the fun part of all of this. If you don't win, you're still a winner in our book. And the reason why you are a winner is because in the description of the live stream, there is a code. If you go to flipaquatics.com, he's doing a 20% off Northfin foods for the rest of this week. So, and that's 20% is a nice discount. So again, it's in the description. The code is Northfin20. And when you go to Flip Aquatics and you buy your Northfin food at checkout, when it says, hey, you got a code, a promotion code or whatever, you type in Northfin 20 and bam, you'll get 20% off the Northfin foods. So we like to do that, right? We're trying to work more and more and more with our vendors to bring value to you because, like I said, it doesn't do us a lot of good if it's just we're the only one benefiting from this because that's just not the way I want to roll. Okay, now here's the deal. How do we do this? Well, what we're going to do is what?
Well, first you need to be on
Oh,
all
yeah.
messages, not top messages.
Yeah, and again,
It's live
we've talked
chat.
about this before because a couple people are like, hey, is it really showing it in order? The best we can do is put it on live chat and all of our electronics, and the first person who does the thing that we ask them to do is the one that wins the stuff. So hopefully it's coming up in the order that it's supposed to, but I can guarantee you it's not if you're in the top chat one because now it's just YouTube's just showing you what it wants to show
You have to
you.
do the little lines and then pick
Yeah.
all messages,
Okay.
not top messages.
All right. Well, anyway, you have a number that you have selected, and I'm going to say go. And the first person who guesses that number, now that number is between 1 and 10. So that's correct, right?
Yes.
And let's see here. It's between 1 and 10, y'all.
Whip, you're not going to win if you always pick 47.
And I think we're done. Are we done?
Yes.
Yes. All right. We're done. You can stop the typing of the numbers now because we have somebody who has found the number. We kept it very narrow this time. Much like those ones where like numbers between 1 and 1,000. 6 hours later, you're like, man, I don't think this is even a thing. Okay. So let's see here. The number was between 1 and 10. And are you here?
Yes.
That's who you've got on yours. That's who I've got on a bunch. Thank you, Victoria, for putting up the stop sign. Appreciate that and all your hard work. And I don't even know where you found that emoji. I didn't know it existed, but I'm glad you found it. Okay, so the winner, go ahead and show the number. The number is the magic number 6. And the first person we have on our screens, all of them, is Betta Aquatics. So
Yay.
Betta Aquatics, congratulations. You have won
Congrats.
all this Northfin stuff. And if you're breeding Betta's Betta Aquatics, that
Oh my
fry
gosh.
starter food is going to be magnificent.
Gone.
Yeah, and so will the Betta Bits. So, Betta Aquatics, here's what you have to do. You're going to send us an email. That email address is primetimegiveaway,
Singular.
right? Primetimegiveaway, all one word, at yahoo.com. Leave us your name, your mailing address, and we will get this stuff out to you so that you can enjoy Northfin foods too. And like I said, for everybody else, it's a win-win. Don't you worry. If you want to try it out, and this is what we feed. All right, if it is a prepared food, this is it exclusively. We don't feed anything else to all of our fish. So, and it's awesome stuff. If it's flakes, it's pellets. The Bug Pro is outstanding. And so if you're going to, Flip Aquatics and you're looking at their stuff, the Bug Pro stuff is fantastic. If you've got larger fish, I really like the food sticks because they're about that long. I don't know, maybe ½ inch, maybe slightly larger. They float. And so like all our Vieja, when we had the Oscars, the tilapia, the Severums, the bigger fish, the Midas cichlids, our African cichlids, they love the big food sticks. They've got the jumbo pellets as well. For all of our bottom feeders, it's like I said, it's usually a mix of Bug Pro. We'll usually do the 1 millimeter, and then I think the 2s and the 3s. I'll kind of switch that up. Like the clown loaches really love the 2s, and I just chuck that in the bottom, and it sinks to the bottom of the 150. Our bristlenose plecos, I'll just take a big old handful of like the 1 or the 2 millimeter sinking pellets and just chuck that in there in our 40 breeder. I mean, it's a big handful, and they just devour the stuff. So like our shrimp, I feed the sinking pellets, especially the Bug Pro, to the shrimp. They love it. The Krill Pro, they like that a lot as well. So give it a try. It's good stuff. And the thing about the Northfin products is they don't have the fillers and things. So it doesn't look, when you look at their flakes and things like, well, this isn't all green and red and brown and tan like some of the big manufacturers or some of these places in the big box stores. But that's because they're not filling the food full of fillers and things that'll allow the food to have properties it probably shouldn't have. You look at the ingredients list, this is a high-end food. It's going to be more expensive. I'm telling you that right now. The food, just generally speaking, when you find it, no matter where you find it, is going to be a little bit more. But with fish food, you get what you pay for. All right. So that's that. Go to the description. All right. Again, Northfin 20 Go to flipaquatics.com. I haven't done this in 2 weeks. Cut me some slack.
You're doing all right.
You'll get your 20% off. So anyway,
Cool.
Desert Fish, thank you. Really appreciate you sending the 5 Primetime Aquatics memberships. That's Jennifer and Gravedigger and Sharkfin and Tracy and Vibes. They're all brand new Prime Timers. Thank you so much for doing that. That's really cool.
Oh, Amanda had a great question.
Really?
Why does the tank behind your head pop so much more than the others?
You know, that is a magnificent question, and I wish I could. Well, so first of all, I don't know why that tank is so insanely different. I was noticing that today before the live stream. Like, what is going on here? It could partially be because there's like one fish in there now, or there's a few fish. I think the rice fish are in there.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Part of it, I think, is just, so if you look at it as kind of a gradient, so the one behind me is really popping, and then the next one is not as much, and this one is kind of washed out, and the one behind your head, if you were to move, is, well, I don't know if it's as washed out. I think part of it just has to do with the fact that the rock is more visible in the 2 tanks behind Joanna's head, and so that's kind of washing it out. The whole situation here with the camera and the backlighting, I've never ever been, well, I don't know if it's a hot mess, but I've never been able to, especially since we had to swap the computers, I've never been able to fully dial that in. It's one of the things that when we get the gallery done downstairs and we can move all of this downstairs, the tanks will be further back, and the room itself, I think the background is going to be darker, and it's going to allow us to really balance things a little bit better. I hope. That is my hope. Someday. But the studio moving down there is the very last thing that has to happen, because all the tanks have to be up and running and all that stuff before I'll move all this, because then I've got to do all of the data and all that stuff, and probably get a new router for down there. It's going to be I'm going to have to call some people to get that done. Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. By the way, if you asked a question before the giveaway, just ask it again, because what happens in our live chat thing is I can only go so far, and usually when people are typing in a bunch of numbers, I can't go far enough back to get to where we once were. So if you had a sweet question, you want to take that question, can I take your question off some sweet jumps and get like
Shots,
5 feet of air?
Pegs.
Yeah.
Lucky.
Then ask it again, and we'll try to get it taken care of. And Jennifer did bring up a good point. She's like, hit the like button. I'm like, all right. So hold on. I don't really, can I hit my own like button? There's not even a like button here. I can't even do it if I wanted to. So I would have done it, but I can't. It'd be kind of weird though, right? I'm going to like my own live stream. Yeah, that would be cool. Make yourself a dang quesadilla. Yeah.
That's right.
Tina, come eat the food. Yeah. So what'd you do again this summer? Spent in Alaska hunting wolverines. Okay, let's see. Where? Amanda says, where is you win a participation ribbon, Whip? Yeah, Whip gets 47 participation trophies.
Whip suggested that next time I whisper the answer in his ear.
Yeah.
I'll try and do that, Whip.
Yep.
It's 47.
Be like, you know what number it is. It's coming. Someday he's actually going to win. Yeah.
Eventually, Whip, you have to win.
And Whip said, read the ingredients on the Northfin. They are pretty fantastic. I think they are too. And the one thing that I forgot to mention, probably one of my favorite foods, because it is so unlike everything else that's on the market, is the kelp wafers and the kelp flakes. Because it's actually like vegetables as their main ingredients, as opposed to filler and yeast and all kinds of other stuff that's actually not vegetables. So sometimes I talked about this in a video, just because your food is green doesn't mean it actually contains any vegetable matter whatsoever. But the kelp flakes and the kelp pellets, good stuff. Rebecca says, do you give meds in quarantine right away or wait to see if there are problems? It depends. Sometimes one of my go-tos for quarantine, if I think there's going to be an issue and we're starting to, there's a few fish that when we bring them in, I know there's a higher likelihood that something could happen. I really like the Maricin Oxy. It seems to take care of a lot of issues that could potentially pop up. But no, I don't medicate just to medicate. And I know people who do, and the argument is reasonable, right? So I'm not saying that you can't do that. I'm not saying that people who do that are absolutely wrong. I just choose not to. And my background in microbiology is the reason why I don't. And I want to try to minimize the amount of antibiotic resistance. There is anti-protozoal resistance out there. So that's like your ick meds and stuff like that. There's antifungal resistance. I had a really good conversation. This was a couple years ago with the guy, his name is Dan, who basically orders all the fish for APET, which is a freshwater fish wholesaler in our area. And he was talking about, he's been in this industry for decades. And he was talking about not only is there a problem with antibiotic resistance to treat bacterial infections in fish, but he's seeing a growing and very serious problem in the antiprotozoals, i.e. the ick meds that we use and the concentrations that are necessary to cure some of these strains of ick. And he said it's pretty troubling, right? And they're a very large wholesaler, and so they see this stuff far more than the vast majority of the people in the world would see this kind of thing because they're getting fish from all over the place. So I'm trying to do my part in making sure that that doesn't happen. And I think as long as we're taking care of that on our end, the likelihood that the antibiotic resistance is a huge problem or the anti-ick meds become a huge problem is decreased. So I'm not throwing in ick meds from the start. I'm waiting to see if there's an issue but I'm also observing those fish multiple times per day. So the minute I see something that looks unusual, and by the way, it doesn't have to be a sign that is completely visible. Like, yes, spots are usually an indication of ick, but you can see when a fish is irritated, just not right. If they're flashing, if they're breathing heavy, if they look uncomfortable. I mean, if you're around fish long enough, and some of you know this, if you look at your tanks and you're watching your fish multiple times a day, you'll know when a fish is uncomfortable. Like they're just not right. They just look agitated. They look unwell. And experienced fish keepers learn that. They learn those behaviors, and those behaviors are different for different types of fish, right? So the more experience you have, the less I think it's necessary to have to medicate. And so I try to not do that unless it's necessary. And then when it's necessary, I'm all in, right? I mean, you got to take care of the problem.
Right. From Brett, I have a 55-gallon cycled and empty. I have seen videos about getting cichlids all at once to curb aggression, but wouldn't that cause an ammonia spike?
Love
a good
it.
question.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
Yes. The short answer is yes, it probably would. If your 55-gallon is brand new, and you're right, it's tough to deal with because on one hand you do want to overstock your cichlid tanks, and the more you can add at one time, the better it's going to be. But if it's a brand new tank, you're absolutely right. You will most likely get an ammonia spike, even with things like the Fritzzyme 7 or the Fritz Turbo Start. Now that can help reduce it. So here's what I would suggest. If you're setting up a 55-gallon aquarium, and let's say you're going to do Mbuna cichlids and you want to overstock that tank, there's some ways that you can deal with this that's going to minimize or maximize your success and minimize the likelihood that there's going to be an unbelievable amount of aggression. So here's how I would approach it. Thing number one, choose your fish wisely. Choose the less aggressive Mbuna, especially at first. And so those are your yellow labs, your Solosi, your rusty cichlids. To a certain extent, your red zebras, I don't find them to be overly aggressive, especially at a smaller size, which is the second thing. So choose less aggressive Mbuna first. Don't put in Aratus and Demasoni and Bumblebee cichlids and Johanni, and then later on hope to put in some yellow labs, rusties, and Solosi and expect that to work. It's probably not going to work as well. So I would do the less aggressive first. Second thing is small Mbuna. The nice thing is it's very common to see small Mbuna being sold in pet stores or at swaps. And when I say small, I'm talking about like an inch and a half at the most. They're not gonna look impressive at first, but you're getting two benefits, or actually multiple benefits. One, you get to see them grow up, which is really interesting. You get to see that dynamic being worked out, which leads to the second benefit. Fish can work out their territorial issues better when they are smaller. Right? They know what's going on as opposed to throwing a bunch of large Mbuna in a tank and be like, all right, figure this out. And they're like, hey, we're all grown. We're all alphas. We're going to battle. Where these smaller fish can kind of find their place in the larger community. So smaller fish, less aggressive. The next thing I would do really isn't as much about the fish. It's about how I prep the tank. And so cycled filter media, if you've got another tank, put all the filter floss, put the sponges, if you've got bio rings, put that in the new one. In combination with the Fritz Zyme 7 and the Fritz Turbo Start, which is adding more live nitrifying bacteria, and that will maximize your success. But the best part about that is in a 55 gallon, if I add a half a dozen yellow labs, I'm probably going to be okay if they're small. I'm going to wait a couple weeks, make sure I have no ammonia, no nitrite. My nitrates are hopefully by that point 5 to 10 parts per million. And then I might go out and I might try something different. Like, okay, let me go ahead and add 3 or 4 or 5 Pseudotropheus psilocybe, small. Put those in the tank. When I put those in the aquarium, it's going to be with the lights off. It's going to be basically before the lights go off for the rest of the night. So they're all going to be in there. They're all going to be comfortable. And then when the lights go on, I'm going to watch that. I'm going to let them wake up. The food's going to go in. They're going to eat. That's going to minimize the likelihood of aggression there. And I'm going to keep doing that until I build my colony up. And a 55 gallon to maybe 18 to 20 Mbuna. They're going to be small. It's not going to look like much. And then when they grow up, hopefully it's going to be awesome. And always be willing to move things around if it doesn't work, right? So if you get to a point where you are seeing aggression, maybe you bought something that you were told was going to be less aggressive and it winds up being a real jerk, you can always move those fish somewhere else if you're willing to be like, hey, I got to make a change.
Never say, this is a fun name, never say never ever.
Never, ever, ever.
Never, ever, ever. Where in the world do I find female rummy nose rasbora? He's got, what do you have, like 7 males and 1 more female?
That's extremely common. So when we were first bringing them in, that's all you could get was the males. They didn't even have an option. A lot of the lists I saw didn't even have an option for females.
I don't even have any females.
No. Yeah, that's unfortunate for you, but you're not trying to breed them either. So
true.
For those of you who don't know, the rummy nose rasbora, the males are the ones that have all the color. They've got the really pretty red head, the very nice blue body, the reddish orange tips to their fins. Females are more like an olive greenish sort of color. They don't really have, I don't consider them to be attractive fish. But for your case, if you're trying to breed them, yeah, you're probably going to want a better ratio than 7 to 1. That's a little rough, right? So they are becoming more common. The last couple times I brought in a mix. But the other issue is, and this is going to be the problem with a lot of pet stores, and it's probably the reason why mostly males are coming in, because I don't think a lot of people want the females, right? It's kind of like the peacock cichlids, where the males have all the beautiful color, but I don't know if many people are like, hey, you know what I did? I set up a 125 gallon all female peacock cichlid tank, and you're like,
probably not.
You could have just gone out and gotten creek chubs from the river over there or something, man. You got a bunch of gray and silver tan fish, right? So the rummy nose rasbora has got a lot of color. So it's going to be a little bit tough, but they are kind of coming into existence here, at least in the Midwest. I've seen more and more female rummy nose rasboras.
Yeah.
Michelle, thank you so much for being a member the last month. It's 1 month. That's pretty cool. Woohoo, let's make it many more. I hope so. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And then Never Say Never Ever also said during my weekly maintenance, thank you for the Dollar Tree paint cups.
Oh, nice.
Glad they're helping you
That's
out.
an
Aren't
oldie
they
but a
handy?
goodie.
Oh my gosh, they're so handy.
We use those things out. So the paint
I
cups,
can never find them.
they have a handle and they have a flat edge. And so it's especially important. So for those of you
Spout.
who are ever doing anything like trying to scoop substrate out of a tank, which has been really useful for us when we've been breaking all these aquariums down, with that nice flat edge, we can just go in there and scoop the gravel or the sand right out of the aquarium and really get it to a point where now there's just a little bit left. You rinse it out with a hose, all gone. So that's been a big help.
Good times.
Jennifer says also suggestions for food for a whiptail catfish. We have a lot of them. We've brought in the L10As, the L11As, which are really cool whiptail-like catfish. I feed them a variety of things, from the North Fin pellets that we were talking about earlier, the sinking pellets. I will put in the kelp wafers as well. They will eat that. So I haven't found them to be particularly picky or anything like that. They go crazy. The other thing, too, which is cool about those kelp wafers, is when I throw them in for the Cory cats, you wouldn't think the Cory, this is the best. I got to get this on a short. But you throw in a kelp wafer with a big group of Cory cats, and you know what they do?
What?
They start eating it but they all in unison start circling around it. And they do this. The Venezuelans do it. The Julies do it. The pandas do it. They all do it. They're eating, and their little tails are wagging in the air, and they just go all around it. And they're just doing like this little tornado circle around the kelp wafer.
Oh my god.
I'll have to do that before, because we're going to probably sell out of all of our quarries this weekend.
That's adorable.
Yeah.
And you could speed it up too. That would make it really fun.
Yeah.
Make it look
It's like a little
really-
dance. It's like a little group
like
dance.
a little carousel.
Almost
a
like
quarry
a
carousel.
What's that game? Duck, Duck, Goose. They're basically playing a game of Duck, Duck, Goose, only without any hands.
It's so much fun.
They're all doing it. Yeah. Okay, let's see. I saw something, then I lost it. Rain says, I have a male copper samurai betta. Never seen one. Sounds pretty cool. In a 20 long with 10 neon tetras. Any suggestions on others that would complement these colors? Let's see. Copper samurai betta with neon tetras, which we've done that combo. It's worked just fine. So what would I want to do? So you got your neon tetras in there. Probably I would want to go with maybe ember tetras. That'd be cool, right? So you get some orange. Or the green kubatai, so you have some green.
Really light green, yeah.
And those are both small enough where they're going to fit well in the 20 long, big enough where the betta's not going to eat them. And if you're having success with the tetras, most likely those will be fine. But the key for me, especially if you've got a long fin male, is feed the other fish well enough so that they're not as likely to fin nip your betta. Chris says Medaka rice fish. That would be cool too. They're active. Those are really active fish. Very cool. Let's see here. My BEA has really bad ick. BEA. What's a BEA? BEA. It doesn't. All right. So it's got ick. I've tried heating up the tank to 85 and also adding salt, but no luck. Ick dies at 85. So it depends on how long you do that. I usually keep the temperatures up until I see the last spot, and so that could mean a couple of weeks. But ick will not survive at 85 degrees. It's a lethal temperature. If you've got the meds like the ICX, that will speed things up a little bit too.
Wonder if it's supposed to be EBA, electric blue car.
Oh, maybe. Yeah,
Maybe.
Yeah. So, but they can handle that. I've run them at that temperature for ick before, and they handle it okay. So, yeah, if you keep that temperature up, it speeds up the life cycle so fast. They only live for about a day, maybe two, and you should be able to wipe everything out inside of maybe, like, let's say a week or two. Yep.
Have you already answered the question on schooling species? 20 gallon?
I have not.
Hot dog. All right, this is from Griffin.
All right.
Looking for a schooling species to add in a 20-gallon community with 6 male guppies and a honey gourami. Any suggestions?
All right, so we got 6 male guppies, a honey gourami, and a 20.
Yeah.
And we're looking for a schooling fish.
Yep.
6 male guppies and a honey gourami. Okay, so male guppies going to have a little bit of... So this is our thought process, right? What we're thinking about is, I'm thinking 6 male guppies, very active, possibly longer fins. So we got to keep it non-fin nipping. Honey gourami, not as active, kind of mellow. Probably is doing okay right now with the guppies in terms of getting food and all that stuff, and a 20 long. If that's the only fish that are in that tank, I would love to add maybe some panda cories or some pygmy cories or some habrosus cories for the bottom. Get a little action going down there. And I'd probably want to do 6 or so. I think of any one of those. You can do more with the habrosus or the pygmies because they're smaller. Pandas aren't a huge fish, but 6 would be a good number. But that's not a schooling fish necessarily. So
no. What my first guess or my thought was embers, but embers will be fin nippy. Remember?
Yeah,
With the betta?
Yeah, but again, if you feed them well, they stop. And they'll be less fin nippy with a guppy than they would be a betta because guppies are fast and crazy and the fins aren't as large.
What about neons?
Yeah, maybe the black neons. But yeah, any type of neon could work just fine.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the green kubatais, you've got... Those are all relatively small
How about
fish. Lampi rasboras, galaxy rasboras would be pretty cool.
Glow lights?
Glow light tetra, absolutely. Yeah. You could do cherry barbs. Cherry barbs
Yeah.
are fun, especially the males. They get a
pretty.
really, really deep red. That would be pretty cool. You were just showing me the picture of the red Peruvian red pencil
Oh,
fish.
yeah.
Crazy expensive. They're really expensive fish, kind of rare.
Beautiful.
But
though.
oh my gosh, those fish are amazing. So those are some options, some things that you could consider. For sure. Angel says, I have a 5-gallon. Can one pea puffer be fine, or cherry shrimp, or some small tetras? What are your thoughts? In the 5? So we did a 5-gallon stocking options video. Check it out. Like 5-gallon community, like what you can keep together. So one pea puffer would be fine in a 5-gallon. I wouldn't put more than one. And I would not put shrimp in with the pea puffer, but you could absolutely do any type of Caridina shrimp. Those would work out just fine. Small tetras, I don't necessarily go with the small tetras in a 5, but a lot of my really small rasboras, like the exclamation point, the dwarf rasbora, the chili rasbora, the mira rasbora, you could do a dozen of those in a 5-gallon, and you'll still look at that tank and be like, wow, there's a dozen fish in there, but it really doesn't look like it because they're so tiny. So those are all options. The fleur-de-lis killifish, we've got those in here breeding like crazy. These tanks are only, what are they, 8.3 gallons, and this one behind Joanna's head, I mean, they're breeding like mad. Oh my gosh, they must think it's time to eat. There's like 6 of them right up front right now looking at us. And there's subwasser tang in there, and they're almost treating it like an anemone or something. They're going in there, and the babies go in there. But
so happy.
the point is that those are really tiny fish, and so you could easily put a half a dozen in there and not look like a tank is overcrowded. So a lot of people think, 5 gallons too small. And in some ways, 5 gallons small, it's limiting, but there are still a lot of different types of fish that can go in a 5-gallon and not look like it's overwhelmed or crowded or something.
Born Again Farm Girl says pea puffers will eat your shrimp like Tic Tacs.
Yes, they will. And they'll
Bye-bye shrimp.
let you know that it's happened. Michelle says, my cousin's turtle is a happy camper, and the 40-gallon breeder we got from you worked out beautifully. That's cool. Yeah, that 40 breeder is a better option than I know you were saying the 55-gallon, but in terms of the surface area that the turtle would have, it would work out. It's good because they don't need a high tank. So, that'd be a better option than the 55 for sure. Very cool.
Cheryl, yes. Hot dog. You got it. You know where that's from. You don't know.
What?
From a movie. Hot dog. You would have no idea. I was surprised that he actually watched this movie a number of Christmases ago. It was a proud moment. First I was shocked, and then I was just like super proud because like half the movie was over and you were watching, but then dinner came, so you had to leave it, and then you finished it. And I was
it's probably like one of those things where I'm a person of commitment. When something happens and I commit to a start.
It's a Wonderful Life. Remember that one?
No. I mean, I'm
Who's
sure
in
I
it?
watched it. I have no idea.
Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah.
The best. Don't do it.
Oh, come on, man. That's all he ever says. Oh, come on. Oh, wow. Come on, man. That's all I've ever heard him say.
He never said that, and
Yes,
you know
he
what?
did. He said it a
doesn't
million
even
times.
sound like him.
Oh, come on. Oh, shucks. That's my Jimmy Stewart impersonation. Remember a couple weeks ago when you wanted me to sing? Well, I've graduated to impersonations of other people.
So bad. See what I have to put up with?
Barbara says, how many endlers would be okay in an 8-gallon tank? 400. I usually start with 400, and then a lot of breed, there's 1,000. No, I'm kidding. 8-gallon tank. I would start with a couple males and maybe 4 females. And if they start to breed, you can control populations by moving some of the fish out. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Angel says, tank mates for a pea puffer in a 5-gallon. I don't really know if there are any, because usually in a 5-gallon, I'm looking at things like snails and shrimp, like we were talking about before. Well, I mean, again, you could potentially do some of the small rasboras. I mean, I don't see why an exclamation point, mira, chili, dwarf rasboras, half a dozen of those. We kept a pea puffer. Don't do this. This probably wasn't the best idea, but remember we had the pea puffer in with those glow light zebra Daniels?
Yes.
And somehow it worked.
Yeah.
The zebra Daniels went crazy.
They were always moving.
But they didn't really eat snails, so it didn't matter. So, yeah, you could probably do some of the smaller rasboras that I just mentioned.
Yeah,
don't do the Daniels. That was not.
The puffies usually stay towards the bottom. Give them lots of plants, you know, to play around in and hide and poke out of.
But that could work. Just no invertebrates.
Jennifer has never seen It's a Wonderful Life. Jennifer,
You're not missing anything.
You need to see it.
No, you don't.
You need to see
You
it.
don't. Your time would be much better. If you're going to watch Christmas movies, your time would be much better spent watching Die Hard 4 times, Christmas Vacation 10 times, watching Lethal Weapon at least 4 to 6 times, throwing a couple Home Alones.
You can squeak in one watch.
But why would you want to do that at the
This is a
risk
great
of
movie.
not
It's a
watching
great movie.
Christmas Vacation for the 15th time in the Christmas season? I don't
It's
understand.
classic. And
I
then after you're done with that, watch
Oh,
White
and then
Christmas.
watch Elf. Watch Elf 8 times, and you don't have
Yes.
to watch White Christmas either. Then, yeah. Yep. You see how that works? Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Ernest Saves Christmas. I've never seen that. I should watch that. I've never seen it.
Yeah, we'll have to add it to the list because somebody suggested something that we watched for, I think it was around Christmas time, and we actually liked the movie, so it was kind of cool.
Cool.
Tyson says, "Hey guys, what's up? Enjoying the stream? That's good to know. I'm starting a Betta sorority in a planted 29-gallon with some small Tetra dithers. How many Bettas and how many dithers do you recommend?" All right, so I'm going to be the Debbie Downer here. I personally would not do the sorority in a 29-gallon. And the only reason is when I did the Betta sorority video, I did that from personal experience and failure. And then I talked to people who are large-scale Betta breeders who have had far more success. And when we all had our powwow, the general consensus was with the Betta sororities, the bigger the tank you have, the more overstocked you can make that tank, the better success you're gonna have. And so you almost treat it like overstocking an Mbuna tank. So if it were me, I don't think I would even attempt a Betta sorority unless I had a 4-foot tank. And then if I did that, I would probably take that 4-foot tank, let's just say it's a 55-gallon, and I'd probably put 40 Bettas in there. And it seems like there would be a lot, but Bettas don't get very big, especially the females. And that would probably work. But then once you do that, I'm not putting any other fish in there. Because at that point, what you're trying to do is you're trying to set up enough, have enough Bettas, almost like an Mbuna cichlid tank where there's really no territory. It's too overwhelming to fight everybody. But understand when you're doing that, you're also introducing risk, right? And so the risks are that possibly some of the Bettas could still get bullied. The risks are if one Betta gets sick, the disease in that tank can spread faster than if you just had a normally stocked tank. And so, when you're talking about things like bloat and all that kind of stuff, that can happen. So in some ways, I guess that's the reason why I don't mess with Betta sorority tanks. The ones that I've seen that I were really impressed by were at least 4-foot tanks or even 6-foot tanks that were overwhelmingly awesome looking, but there was so much color and so much activity in those tanks, there was no real room for other fish. Now in a 29-gallon, if I were doing that, I would go with a single Betta, and I wouldn't do the sorority. I would stick with that. If I wanted to do something with all that color, in a 29-gallon, I might just try to choose different fish that can really offer that color, but then not have those issues. Like
Rummy nose.
the rummy nose rasboras, maybe with peacock gudgeons, and maybe you do some guppies, right? Maybe you do some really cool, flashy sort of Dumbo ear guppies that's got a male-only guppy tank. So I think the success rates would be higher because in a 29 at best, maybe you're going to try what a lot of people do, and that's 4, 6, 8 Bettas, and it might work for a while. Then as those Bettas start to mature, sometimes things start to happen. Yeah.
Matthew, yes, excellent point. Peanuts Christmas, top 3, absolutely.
Okay, yeah,
And-
definitely. I'll add that.
And Sharpie Aquatics, just so you know, they're disappointed in you. And you know what? At GCCA, you should tell them in person. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's. Yeah, you can do that.
You can.
Chris says, how come every manufacturer puts a Betta on their 3-gallon tank box? Then newbies don't understand when we say 10-gallon or better. Because that's what's going to sell, right? The Bettas are, we did a video on that a number of years ago. It's probably a 3 or 4-year-old video where I showed a bunch of fish tank displays, like especially for the beginner kits. And it's insane. Like, first of all, everything's got to be Photoshopped because you're not keeping all these fish together. But then they're Photoshopping angelfish in a 10-gallon or a 20-gallon. There's
worst.
Angelfish are going to get way too big for a 20-gallon. They've got, angelfish with your opaline gourami, with your mollies, with your platies, with your neons,
'Cause they
all
look
in a
pretty.
20.
Yeah.
Or like you said, they've got the bettas in the 3-gallon, and they've got a little school of something like neons, photoshopped smaller, swimming behind it, all in this fish tank. And it's like,
It's really aggravating.
you're not, maybe you're selling product, but at what cost? At what long-term cost? And I think a lot of these companies don't understand that. They don't understand the ramifications. Their short-term gain in marketing things that should not be marketed is going to come back with a long-term problem. Right? And that's going to be people getting out of the hobby, not spending as much time in the hobby. I've talked to industry experts before, and somebody threw a number around, I've mentioned this before, that the average new hobbyist stays in the hobby for around 6 to 9 months. And then they're gone. And usually they're gone because they realize, I thought fish were going to be far less time consuming than cats and dogs and hamsters and lizards. And it turns out that's not necessarily true. They didn't understand the nitrogen cycle. They didn't do their research when they were stocking fish. They're using bad information like pictures on the packages you're talking about, and then wondering why they have aggression issues, wondering why fish are dying. They're not quarantining fish like we talked about at the beginning of the stream. And so they've got all these issues. And what was supposed to be a fun thing, like when you get a cat or a dog or any other pet, it's like, oh, this is fun, this is good, this is hopefully enhanced my life, becomes nothing but stress. And then they're gone. And most of the time, those people who leave are not returning because they remember the bad experience. Like, oh, I'm not going through that again. I tried that 5 years ago and it was a disaster. Unless they have an overwhelming desire to be like, yeah, that didn't work, but I'm going to really try and do it right this time. I'm going to really try to learn about it. But that's not the norm. That's kind of the exception to the rule.
Norm.
Yeah.
Just so you know, Shannon and Ryan appreciate your Christmas list.
Thank you. I appreciate your appreciation.
You should get one vote.
Yep. I'm glad. John says, no ballast sharks in a 10. Yeah, that would be a bad idea. And even that, I mean, you look at some of those little signs that they have sometimes associated with the big box stores, you get the ballast shark. You should have at least a 29-gallon or a 55-gallon. Like, heck no, you need a 6-foot tank is debatable with a ballast. Because first of all, you should have them in groups. And ballast sharks get huge, and they're super active.
Yep.
It's like even a 6-foot tank, you're looking at these fish, and they're like, I've seen some ballast sharks every bit of 14 inches, and not only that, but they, in the center of their body, they get kind of tall, and they are very aggressive eaters, and they're just crazy fish. They're great fish. I've had them in a 4-foot 150, which I will never do again. But yeah, it's just better information needs to be out there. Okay. Let's see here. Do a couple more, and then we'll call it a night. We'll let everybody get to bed here pretty soon. Coffee says, do you guys think there is a preferred vegetable that bottom feeders eat? What's best in your opinion? We're not a good source for that because I actually don't feed vegetables to my fish. I have found that either they rot or some fish will eat them, and because we've got the Northfin stuff, we've got the kelp flakes and the kelp wafers and all these different varieties of food, and the Bug Pro and this krill and all these sinking pellets, I don't do a lot of, or really hardly any vegetables. So I don't know what's best. A lot of people will use the blanched green beans or whatever.
Yep. Cucumber.
I tried that. It just rotted. Cucumbers, they just rot. And part of it's probably because, you know what ate them is the snails, like all my pest snails. So if you ever want to get rid of pest snails, throw a cucumber down there or two with a little metal skewer thing and pick it up and be like, oh, I just caught like 50 snails out of there. But the only things that ever ate the vegetables I threw in the tank were pest snails. The fish were just like, I'm not doing this, dude. Yeah. One exception, that was my silver dollars in the 150. And I bet I could feed them pretty much anything and they would eat it. And just as what would you put in a 5-gallon cherry shrimp? Again, the small rasboras, your chilies, your miras, your exclamation points, and your dwarfs would probably work out okay because they're really, really tiny. They have a very, very, very small mouth. Even the shrimplets would be tough. They would be tough to deal with. All right, everybody. I think we're going to call it a night because, it's getting to be about that time. Very much appreciate everybody and all the good questions that you asked, and for the new members and for the super chats and for our moderators holding down the fort. Really appreciate
the best
that.
Moderators
we'll be
ever.
back next week. So, we'll be back 2 weeks in a row, and that's going to be pretty awesome. So write down your questions, bring them for next week, and hopefully we get a chance to answer them then. Thanks again for being here. We will see you next Wednesday, I hope. Bye-bye, everybody.